we have Isaac. Oh, thank you for that, Alex. We have Isaac, who is a data scientist at Apollo Agriculture. And we also have our other two speakers who are co-founders of an agri-tech startup called Shamba Data. Yes, sorry for the mispronunciation, yeah. So they're gonna be taking us through the discussion, and also even as we ask questions to get to know about more about artificial intelligence in agriculture applications, and what's the future of technology in agriculture. So thank you once again for joining us. All right, so with no further ado, Alex, maybe you can just help us screen share so that Kondwani and his team can actually take us through as we begin.
Sounds good. Yes, things are looking up on my end, but I think we could start talking even before. So Kondwani, how are you? They can get going.
Kondwani, can you hear us?
Yeah. Hi, Alex. I run the call. Hope everyone can get me. Yeah, sure.
Yes.
Can everyone get me? Am I clear? Or am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. Sure. Let me share my screen then for the slides. Just give me a second. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So I guess a little bit of a background to who we are, me and Brighton. Brighton's also on this call. I'm mainly doing the one pitching, but he'll chip in as when. But basically, we're Shamba Data. We're a startup that basically provides agricultural data. We both collect it, we clean it, we process it, and with the addition of AI, we provide focus to key stakeholders, Africa stakeholders. I'll talk about them later in the slide, but that's a nutshell about us. And before I go into the next slide, I'll give a bit of a background. We actually initially started through the hackathon provided by Alliance for AI. That was back in 2021. I was with Brighton. And our initial idea was mainly to help with agricultural data, primarily satellite data. And after we came first place in that hackathon, a bit of testing, a little of talking to stakeholders, and that's how we grew to Shamba Data. And today, we've actually reached pre-MVP stage. So we already have our MVP. We've been talking to some customers, and we recently got accepted into an incubator called the Africa Impact Initiative Incubator. This incubator is roughly made up of 16 startups, and there are roughly 500 applications. And even for the pre-incubator, there are 230. So sieving through that list, dropping down for 500, it dropped down to only 16 teams. And fortunately, we're one of those 16 teams. So a bit of background to what we're trying to do. This is our target market, and this is who we really had focus on. This is actually a real person, Bridget. She's actually based in Kenya. And our type of market was ideally someone who works in the agricultural space, whether it be from the public sector, whether it be an NGO, whether it be a private company, whose main focus is driven towards agriculture, whether it be directly working with the farmers or making any form of statistical or policy making that's tied towards farming. So as you can see here for her, she deals with a lot of agricultural data to generate insights for her. And the problem she has, if you've noticed, I highlighted here, is that she can spend at least 50 to 60% of her time collecting, cleaning, preparing data. And it's a really tedious process. And I can give a bit of a background on myself and Brighton. We're both software engineers with experience primarily through hackathons for data science. So for us, who still face the challenge of collecting data, we understand a bit of the hurdles behind collecting agricultural data, but for someone like Bridget, who doesn't come from a tech background, it's a nightmare for her trying to gather that data. And yeah. Okay, I'll go back to what I was saying. Like I said, for her, if you were to look at the problem, her high value task is mainly agricultural forecasting, mapping, writing research papers, reports, and talking to stakeholders. This is the high value tasks, but the problem is she's wasting a good 50 to 60% of her time doing these two other tasks, primarily data collection, where ideally this is the gap we're trying to solve, where we could solve our problem or save our time collecting this data. So like I said, going back to what I said before, the problem is high data collection. So costs. So for teams, primarily the government, where they do have the resources to either outsource or build their in-source systems, you find the cost of collecting data is both expensive and inefficient. You find that primarily in Zambia, where I'm based, Brighton's based in Rwanda for now. The problem I found with different stakeholders is that they physically or manually collect this data. So it's not only time consuming, you find it's very expensive, you find the data is pretty irrelevant. For example, you find they only have agricultural data on crop yield, for instance, on maize for 2015, 2016. Data that's really relevant because we live in 2022, for instance, because they don't have a really efficient and structured process to collect this data. And whatever data they do have is actually underutilized. So if I'm noticing some of the people from the chat have a bit of a background in data science, you know, some basic analytics that we've referred to here or that I've implied towards, you find because these people don't necessarily come from this background, they're not really utilizing this data for the different uses they could apply it for. Our solution, like I said, is really broken down into 3 steps. We just collect this data. We initially started with satellite data, but we're actually dealing with even simple Excel sheets or CVC sheets. These are mainly the 2 types of primary agriculture that you might get data, whether it be where it's Excel sheets, these may come in form of weather reports, temperature, etc. And it's more or less going to be some sort of data that's been projected from a given date to another date. It really varies and depends. So based off this data, we just collect it. If it's satellite data shown here, we segment it. And then after that, depending on what our clients want, we even provide forecasts. So users may want something beyond just getting that data. They want forecasts to say, okay, based on this data, what will be the crop yield for this month, for instance? We provide that. And lastly, another feature that we've been working on to improve on is reports. So this reports is based on your region of interest. For example, let's say I'm based in Nairobi and I want to know the performance of any form of crops, primarily maize, for instance, grown in Nairobi. Our aim is to build that. So that's the next feature that we're working on. And yeah, just a bit of understanding of our business model. We work on demand. So basically users pay based on the data. And yeah, for the sake of time, I won't dive into much of this. But like I said before, target market may be primarily Ministry of Agriculture, different NGOs and private stakeholder organizations that work on agriculture, insurance companies and banks, because they really need this data to understand what's the risk indicators, what's the risk of lending to a certain region, or how will this sector perform in regards to agriculture in the next few months. And then there might be on a more hobbyist level, these may be data scientists, these may be data engineers who love playing around with agricultural data. They're not necessarily the largest market in comparison to these 2 or these 3, but they are interested in this kind of data. And of course, agriculture economists and technicians, but normally you find they end up working for normally these 2 stakeholders, 3, yeah. And yeah, our traction, like I had mentioned slightly earlier yet, we're still at the MVP stage yet. So we've been more of getting pre-signups and we hope to launch ideally by end of this year. And yeah, like I said before, we joined the Africa Impact Initiative Incubator, 16 teams out of 230, and we have yes raised an undisclosed amount of seed funding. And yeah, I guess breaking down our challenges, as like I said, we're still a startup and it's a 2-person team. Both me and Brighton are primarily technical, but we do have gaps in our team that we're trying to fix or solve, which may be things in regards to sales, marketing, trying to gather more partnerships. And since we haven't launched yet, trying to build some user trust and monetize our product. And notably, I guess you would even see it throughout this talk, because of dealing with the data, very key data, there's still a lot of legal implications behind using and leveraging this data in regards to privacy concerns. But yeah, that's basically us. And that's really the end of my pitch. Let me stop sharing my, if there are any questions before I stop sharing my screen. Then.
You can actually just raise your hand or just type the questions on the chat, just as Kondani has mentioned. Even as we continue.
Let me stop sharing my screen then.
Any questions for our speaker? Oh, I can see a hand raised. You can go ahead. AgriFarm.
My name is Nelson. The owner of BNT AgriFarm. It's a small farm that we've already started venturing into horticulture, growing. That's more of we normally do watermelon and onions.
Kindly, if you're not the one speaking, please mute your mic.
Sorry.
It's
sorry.
okay.
Okay.
You can continue, Mr. Nelson.
So our major problem was about the seasons when these crops are grown and when they have high demand on the market. So my question would be that do we have a model that has been developed that will tell the young farmers that maybe the month of December or the month of January or the month of May, it's when the likelihood of prices are likely to go high. Maybe the prices for onions or the prices for watermelons. Do we have a model that is in existence? Over to you, whoever was presenting.
Okay. Sure. So it's not necessarily a market we've looked at primarily from your level per se, in regards to, if I notice, if I've got you right, you said you're a small farm working mainly on watermelon farming. And yeah, basically you're more or less, I believe it could be mid-level small scale farmer. Could you correct me if I'm wrong, just to clarify?
Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yes. So the main market we've primarily focused on is mainly large-scale stakeholders, but it's something we're still open to. So it's actually something that we're trying to build called more or less a market comparison indicator, like what you said. So basically, I can take the same example of watermelons. I'm a farmer. To clarify, what country are you based in? I want to give a good example.
I'm based in Kenya. That's western part of Kenya. That's in Bungoma.
Great. So yeah, Bungoma, like what you said, let's say I'm comparing the region you're based in and Nairobi. And I say, for example, let's say I'll price it in dollars because it's a bit easier for me. Let's say the cost of a watermelon in Nairobi, for instance, in this market, it's $50, whereas the price of in your region, for example, let's say it's only $30. Ideally, that's what we're trying to work on to say, for you, a farmer, before you reach the season of harvest, you get an indicator to say, oh, this market is actually performing better, so I'm better off going to sell there. But we've been building that from the point of view of a larger stakeholder, but it's still something there, like you've shown there is market demand, it's something that we could build. And another thing that I noticed you talked about is basically a season indicator. So we don't necessarily directly do this, but I have seen other agriculture startups, such as a startup called A Trade Zone, where they'll try to build something, but not exactly to what you want, but similar to what you said, where you get an indicator to say what will be demanded this season. Like, for example, let's say watermelons will be in high demand in, let's say, next year, July. For you, the farmer, understanding from your situation, it wouldn't make sense for you to try to sell on the market now when you know the demand won't be so great now, but it will be great in July. So if I'm clarifying your question, we would love to see for something built off that to help you know what's the best season to sell your produce. Am I correct?
Yeah, you are correct. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's something we actually haven't worked on. It's just a price indicator. But if it's something that has got a market interest, it's something that we could work on. And like I said, for us, we primarily focused on larger scale stakeholders, but if individual farmers are also interested in what we have, we wouldn't mind providing that data as well. So thank you. Thank you very much, Nelson.
Okay, thank you. And how do we get access to such a data? Is it open to public or it's something that is private?
So for now, it's ideally private because, you know, we're a business, we have to sell it as a service. So remember, our difference is we don't just give you raw data that you may not really get or will not really see the value. We process it,
Okay.
we clean it, and so that whole process is a cost behind that. So naturally, that data can't come for free of charge. That's why in the slide I said it's on demand. So we'd have to give it to you at the price. Like I said, we're still at MVP page, so we haven't started pricing yet, but that data is not free. It's not open to the public. We charge it. We charge for it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Great, great.
Okay, well, those are really nice questions. Do we have any more questions from the audience before we go to the next step? Okay, if not, I've seen the issue on data compliance and data policy is something that has been really explained here. So I think it's going to be my cue to actually welcome the other speaker, Mr. Isaac, to kindly, introduce himself, his experience as a data scientist in the agricultural sector, how it's been for him, what he's seen. So I think this will be my next cue to welcome him and to also help us tackle on that question more. Mr. Isaac.
Thank you so much, Patty, and everyone in the call. So I'm Isaac Loremeta. I'm a data scientist at Apollo Agriculture. So Apollo Agriculture is an organization, we call ourselves an agri-fintech organization. So focused on helping smallholder farmers to maximize their profits by providing financing, farm inputs, agronomic advice, insurance, and to some extent market access. So the organization has been existing since 2016, and so far we have reached over 300,000 farmers in Kenya. So it's a great impact so far. And well, among the key things that have helped the growth is the use of technology, especially machine learning and AI. So for things like satellite data to do prediction, to do yield predictions, to build better credit decisions, because we are giving credit to farmers without having any assets as collateral. And basically using a lot of various technological solutions to keep costs low for the organization so that we can deliver to farmers a product with that they can afford. Because when you're targeting smallholder farmers, of course, the price is a big issue, and meaning being efficient with what you have goes a long way in ensuring that you can provide a product and also have a low interest rate to attract these farmers and to serve farmers at the end of the day. Yeah, so that's a bit about Apollo and what we do. So going into the specific question that has been raised, the issue of compliance and data. Of course, when you're working, especially in such a case, because you're dealing with finance, there's a lot of data that you collect because you're giving loans that are not backed by any assets. So we collect a lot of data on our farmers, from identifying data, from data about their history, about their farms, about their financial situations. Also, we work with CRB data, so Credit Reference Bureau, to see their histories, so that we can decide what risk levels they're at. So in collecting all this data, of course, comes the big issue of data privacy, data protection. You want to ensure that sticking to best practices. So one of the things that guides us a lot, and that's a great thing that has come up in Kenya, is the Data Protection Act that was established in 2019 and was enacted and started coming into effect, and is still being effected step by step in different ways. And so getting for the data side of the business to to be very well acquainted with these data protection laws and data protection best practices. Of course, there are best practices, and then there's what the law demands, and working with partners, and if it's doing things like working with cloud partners, working with partners that are industry standard recognized as best practicing organizations. So you're not revealing or leaving any chance of exposing your users' data, which would be a massive invasion of privacy, and even would be illegal in our case as an organization, as a data gathering organization. So just being held accountable by the law, being guided by the law and what the acts and the act directs. So we even have a team, so from the legal side, that are very well acquainted with the technology side of it, and they guide our organization in terms of all these data protection acts and the things that we are supposed to do. Like recently, I could remember a small minor example that we had, the whole organization was forced to, and we had two-factor authentication enforced on every member of the organization, every staff member. So that's a really small thing, but it goes a long way in protecting the organization and even the users at the end of the day from being infiltrated by any nefarious acts that could be out there. So yeah, that's some of what we do at Apollo with data protection. Yeah, and would like to hear more from any of the other guys on the call. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Mr. Isaac. So as you were talking, I picked up a part where you were talking about in terms of data, history of the farm, the farmer, what they've planted, how long they've been there. And I just remembered that Kondwani had mentioned that one of the challenges that he's facing as a startup is, building customer trust. Because when we talk about artificial intelligence in agriculture specifically, it's very complex, using these technologies, using machine learning, data science. And we are talking to farmers who probably don't even have a smartphone,
Yeah, true.
Most of the farmers are very traditional minded. You come up with these technologies, you tell them it can help them do this, and they're like, what are you talking about? How are we gonna trust you with this data? So how can a startup, especially an agri-tech startup like Shamba Data, how can they, face this challenge and overcome it? Because you need customers, and those customers are farmers. So how can we go on about this? How can they go on about this?
Yeah, I think that's always a very big question, especially when you're introducing technology to new people and older generations probably that are not very akin to technology and all these new things that are happening. So at Apollo, I would say one of the biggest things that helps the company thrive all the way through the process is the agents that we use. So we have field agents, or we have over 5,000 field agents all over. And these are the people who interact with the farmers. So they go to the farmers, they speak to them, they tell them about Apollo. So they sell Apollo as a company, they sell what the company does, and then sell the products to them. And so just as you've said, these are people, of course, in this process, you can't have a whole terms and conditions sheet explaining to them about data and how we process their data. So going to the farmers, who are our end users in this case, and tailoring the message in a way that they can receive it and they can agree. So for us, that's using agents. So an agent will typically be someone who lives in that same environment. So maybe if I'm an agent in these, we recruit agents from, depending on the wards that we operate in. So this agent will probably be someone who speaks the farmer's language, someone known to the farmer, or someone just familiar to them. And when now this person talks to them and sells them this idea, then it's easier to buy into it. So basically, I think the best way to get it is to think about your end user and get a way to talk to them in a language they understand, in which case I've said for us is using the network of agents on the ground.
I'm also thinking another way could be, using dashboards. I recently went for this hackathon, Trigger, not Trigger Foods, another company called Trigger, and they deal with weather and climate. And for them, they actually use dashboards because they also have to, deal with farmers. They deal with a lot of farmers, and most of these farmers are very traditional minded. So they also use dashboards to do that. They were discussing about that at that time when we were there doing the hackathon. So maybe Isaac, you can maybe elaborate more on that, like how do dashboards come into play?
Yeah, thank you. So for that case, when you have the data, especially if you're already established and you have a user base already, and you have some of their input and know what your users want, what your farmers want, then in this case now, that's when you're at the level when you can start talking about building user-facing equipment such as dashboards that give information, that provide data. So for us, generally, we for the farmers, what we have at Apollo, we recently, actually this year, launched this initiative called Apollo Digital, where we are really trying to get to a point where these farmers themselves, those who are capable, so we find around 40% of our farmers have smartphones and they use these smartphones. So how can we establish an application where the farmers can do some of these things by themselves? So in this application, that's where we have things like the dashboards that have their history. A farmer can log in and see their own history and have their stats, since they've joined, the kind of trends that have been going through. They can look at their yield, see maybe they joined in 2017, started working with Apollo, and we've been tracking the yield year over year, and they can see the improvements. They can see the value that it's added to themselves. And then, so this tracking of data, once already someone is your farmer, then you can have the ability to do such analytics and provide them even with information like we expect, depending on how the weather is going this year, and you've planted X amount of maize in your 1 acre field, we expect you'll have this amount of yield. That's where, like, now our analytics, our machine learning models are coming in from our data team, and then just giving this information to the farmers in form of simple data dashboards on the app that we are talking about. Yeah, so that's one of the way that we deal with it at Apollo. Yeah.
Okay, so what about for those farmers who don't have access to smartphones? Or they have to have?
So for the app, Apollo Digital, that's only for the people with smartphones. So for the rest, and even for a bigger chunk, as I've said, only 40% of our users currently have smartphones. So the bigger part of how we've been operating all the way since before has been through USSD and SMS, and a lot of IVR calls also. So things I talked about, like about if we want to send some information about weather, about advice on planting, about advice on application of fertilizer or pesticides, IVR has been one of the major ways that we've been using before. So we don't rely a lot even on SMS because there's no really good way of telling how the reception is. But on IVR, you can send an IVR and you can tell that this farmer listened to the whole IVR all the way to the end, and then use that to provide the same kind of, it won't be the same as the analytics that they see on the dashboard, but you can have a breakdown of the same analytics in a way that then you can provide them through IVR or SMS.
What's IVR in full? I don't know if you've told us what IVR is in full, because that's an abbreviation, I think, right?
Yeah, it's the interactive voice response. Sorry, it's the record. Want to continue, press 1. If you want to hear these, press 2. If you have a question, press 3. That's that sort of interactive voice message.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's interesting. That's actually much simpler than the SMS thing, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just on that, I'm seeing your team is coming up with really good ideas, to make technology something compatible with people, because I know we're living in the world of technology, but still there are people who find it really hard to actually work around this technology kind of idea. So what do you think is the future of tech in agriculture? I'm seeing a lot of innovation on your side. So what about it? What do you see as innovation, or coming years? What do you see? Because agriculture is a really, really good field, and it's something that's not going away. It's something we need. So it's a must. We look for solutions, Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Just to look at the importance of agriculture, you find studies showing that by 2050, we are going to need to produce 70% more food. I think most people like on the call here are Africans. You can, from the news and everything going around, already we are in a food crisis for this year. Like the last 4 years, there have been failures, or the rain has really failed in most of Africa. Especially I'm more knowledgeable on the Horn of Africa, where we find over 22 million people are facing hunger. So really we need to work a lot on agriculture to increase our food sustainability, to increase yields. And so that's the direction that Apollo is taking, and looking at smallholder farmers. So you find if it's the big farms, of course, those are already people with access to very many sources of tech, of funding, and they can do great things by themselves already. But most people in Africa, most people in Kenya, we know are smallholder farmers, like 1 acre, less than an acre. And providing solutions for these people is really important. And one thing that is already a very good resource in Africa is the use of mobile technology. So very many people in Africa already have mobile phones, whether feature phones or smartphones, and adapting some ways, like I've just talked about IVRs, which have been working really well for us as Apollo. And you are able to reach the farmer without putting so much complexity on them, because they don't want to know what you're doing in the background about your machine learning systems. To them, it's a solution that's going to help them. And I find, because one of the biggest issues with agriculture right now is climate change. Traditionally, we used to know at this specific time of the year, we are going to start planting. Then after 2 months, it's going to be raining at this point. It's going to be harvest time. It was very predictable. But with climate change, things have really gone into a mess. And one of the biggest contributions that we can make using technology is using predictive technologies, predictive models, where we can tell our farmers that, now things have changed. You can't just say in September it's going to be raining. But then we can use satellite data, we can use weather data, we can use historical data to say at this specific week it's going to be raining, and this is the best time to plant, and this is the best seed to use depending on the conditions. So using machine learning, it's a big help in doing things like these predictions that we are talking about. you can even predict and tell in this ward, we expect the yield to be this much with a very good level of efficiency. And actually, one of the things that we are really trying right now is to get to predicting at a farmer level. So yeah, one of the challenges we find is, so when you're dealing with smallholder farmers, these are really small farms, and even getting the satellite data for them becomes a bit of a complexity because of the small size. Yeah. So it brings a challenge in doing very accurate predictions. So for now, most of what we have are mostly at like a ward level, but then we're trying to get to that point where we can say, for this specific field, these are the predictions we have, and have a good accuracy and confidence in telling that. Yeah, so data is still a big thing. The Shamba team has already mentioned that, and it's something we've experienced also. So still really working with partners, trying to work around how we can have more data, and if possible, open data, because also it's really expensive to be buying data all the time. And yeah, then once the data is there, the technologies, machine learning technologies are there, the skills are there. So finding the data and then combining these with different processes, different technologies to have better yield, I feel like that's one of the biggest contributions that AI and tech can make in improving agriculture in Africa.
Okay, so I have two questions just from what you've talked about. You've mentioned that it's easier, it's most of the time it's easy to work with large farmers who have who are large, is it large stakeholders? Let me say that. It's much easier to work with them. So what happens to the small scale farmers? Like, probably you can't have those technologies with them, but what else can you do more? Because I think they should also be part of the change that's happening in technology in agriculture. I think they should be part of that change. So if not the large scale farmers, what else should be done with these small scale farmers?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, for us at Apollo, we target smallholder farmers. We don't work with farmers with land over 3 acres. So I think on the average, most of our farmers are less than an acre of land. And this is exactly the thing. It's a problem, and we noticed it was a problem, and that's why we focused on those farmers. I think, as I mentioned, like bigger farmers are able to very many different alternatives. So the issue of getting this data is what we are actually really looking at, getting efficient use of satellite data for a very small piece of land. And that's what we are currently focusing on, like in our data team, to get efficient and improved ways of predictions and identification of even these pieces of land, and then have combined these with, because the models are already there, they're existing, and then getting a way of really getting to the small specific farms, and then saying, then we have this level of confidence that our prediction models can work even on a half-acre piece of land, which is what we are working on right now as Apollo, and bringing that value that we know big farms are already using. Big farms use things like precision farming, drones, IoT, then bringing that value all the way down to these smallholder farmers. Yeah.
Okay, so the issue of data still stands to be a really big one. But my question will be, when you're talking about an issue of data, are you talking about data quality or amount of data? Like, I know something like this really needs big data. So are you talking about that quantity of data, or are you talking about quality, or the issue is both?
The issue is both, but I can say quality is a bigger issue than, even more than amount, because once you have data that you can say this is quality data, and maybe for training models, you can use some data augmentation techniques. So having quality data is more important for us than having more data in terms of we have 1 million rows or something like that. But you find just historically, there's a very big gap in data collection practices for most operations, I'd say for Africa, for Kenya. If you go look for traditional, if you go look at research papers, there's a very big gap. You have fewer and fewer resources that you can use for African applications, so like Kenyan applications. And also there's also the fact that when you find this data, in most cases, people, organizations or people who've done this collection, they've done it privately. So it's a thing that you have to incur this cost. But and the more we have more players in this area, the easier it's going to be. Yeah, of course, we don't really want to say that we want it for free, but also just have more players, so making access easier and a bit more economical, because you're looking at what is going to be the return on investment for us as an organization after we purchase these data.
Okay, so
Very, very cool. Yeah, I see a question from BNT AgriFarm.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Fabian. I think as Fabian was presenting, I like the way you are bringing up the issue to do the data. My question would be this: what metrics or how do you normally measure the accuracy of your predictive models?
Thank you.
Over to you, Fabian. Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah. So for us at Apollo, so since we are already in the business, we have been there for 6 years now. So we are a bit lucky that we have all that historical data about our farmers. So if we train our models and we can test them and check their accuracy on our own data. So if we worked with these farmers, maybe we can look at use data for a few years for training, and then look at these are the predictions we made for their yield. Then we can go back and check what was the actual yields that year, because they are our farmers and they provide us with that data.
Okay. Maybe a last question would be the year 2021, that's last year, we had a breakout of locusts. I don't know, how best will you advise farmers about this? Do you have a way that you normally deal with it, maybe in a data science way? Maybe you are using machine learning?
Yeah. Actually, you mentioned the locusts, and also, is it earlier this year or late last year, there was an armyworm invasion, especially in Western Kenya, where we have a big footprint. So these are some of the things that I talked about agronomic advice earlier when I introduced our company. So agronomic advice falls under this, where we can tell the farmers that depending on the trends, like I remember the armyworm issue because it was more recent. It was you can say that depending on the data that we are getting on how the trends are going, this area is going to be affected by armyworms at this time. Maybe we know for now that they are in this place, and so they are going to spread into this area, and these are the things that you can do. So the things you can do for us, like for pest attacks, we now recommend that you as a farmer go to go to the agro dealers that we work with and get these specific pesticide and apply it in advance before these pests get to your farm. So that's one of the things that we do. And also, again, we know that such predictions cannot be very accurate, like something like an outbreak of locusts coming in. But then we also have insurance is part of what we cover. So we do analysis. We are like in this region, in this ward, there was an invasion by locusts. It affected our farmers by this margin, and then our insurance partners are bound to pay our farmers some amount on their losses. Yeah, but then this is after already we've given advice and tried to prevent as much as possible and predicted earlier, even before these pests reach the farmers.
Thank you very much. I think my questions are well answered. Thank you.
Thank you for the question.
And fantastic. I think at this point, as we reach the end of the hour, I could take 5 minutes to thank the speakers today a lot for sharing all this information about AI in agriculture. If we're in a room together, I would ask for a round of applause, but we're on Zoom. But still, please give some round of applause where you are, because it was, I particularly enjoyed it. If you guys, have things that you learned something new, please write it on the comments. I'm sure the speakers will be happy to see, what you write on the comments of the new things that you learned. And in addition, I also want to say a big thank you to the, Alliance for AI Futuremakers team for putting this together. Betty, David, Fabian, Rose, you guys were incredible. So thank you very much for putting this together. I'll actually even say a few words on why the Futuremakers program started, right? And let me share 2 slides here that can tell you guys about that. All right, so I believe you guys should be seeing my screen. Really, this Futuremakers program, it was really about disruptive technology, artificial intelligence, virtual reality, blockchain, all of these technologies. When this started about 3 years ago, we really wanted to make it such that African people in African countries, Africans who have traveled abroad, are not left behind when these disruptive technologies are improving the way business and life are run in other parts of the world. When we spoke to people in different countries, we found at least 3 different kinds of people. The smallest group, less than 5%, are people that are already quite informed about artificial intelligence and blockchain and all these technologies. They know how to build it, right? Less than 5%. But then the majority, more than 60%, have never heard the words before, or they saw it in a movie. You watch iRobot movie, and you saw robots, running, or Terminator. Terminator was the oldest one from 20, 30 years ago. And that's how people think about AI, but they are not sure how it affects their regular lives, right? They were not even aware that Google.com, when they search for information on Google, is AI. Only then a smaller group of them, less than 20, 30%, they are aware of AI, but they're kind of alone. They don't have people to learn with, to study with, to keep them accountable. And so even when they start learning, they fall off and they don't complete and become professionals. So that's why we put together the Futuremakers program. It's basically an approach for young professionals to form clubs and communities where now they have 5, 10, 20, 30 other people just like them wanting to learn about AI. They support each other to grow. And after they go through the program, they start reaching incredible outcomes. We are very proud of many of the Futuremakers, right? The people I mentioned before, Betty, David, Fabian, they all started in the Futuremakers program and now they are driving it. The startup that pitched earlier, Shamba Data, they are Futuremakers. And from one of the opportunities, there was a pitch competition at the end of last year. They put together this idea for Shamba data. They won that pitch, and now they have raised money. They have a strong chance of going to Canada to present and raise even more money and continue to build on the idea. You know, what an incredible opportunity. So I'll keep this, pretty short. I think on the chat, they've posted a link. If you're interested in joining one of the clubs, please complete that and they will reach out to you. You can see there are now clubs in 6 different African countries and a couple of them in the US. Very soon, there will be some in Brazil as well. So once you join a club, you and those people will meet once every 2 weeks and, watch a couple of videos, read articles, and have discussions related to artificial intelligence. Very soon, we'll find a way for you to have meetings, not only with people in your group, but people in other parts of the world as well. And we can become, this big team, big network of Africans in AI working on impactful projects. So I really hope, you guys choose to, at the very least, come to future talks like this, but even stronger, choose to join one of the chapters using the form that they shared. Yes, we're very happy that you're able to join us today. And to close, maybe I'll give opportunity for final comments from the 2 speakers. And the question would be, is there any way you want the audience to support you, right? You've helped us a lot with information. Is there a way we can help you, either as a customer or an investor, or different ways? What do you think? Either of you can go first.
Thank you for that, Alex. So for me, just grateful for the opportunity to share. Of course, as you've talked about the community, I'm a proud member of the community, and it's a great thing for as a professional to have a community of people that you can talk to and just interact. So personally, that's all I'm looking forward to getting. So more interactions to build each other up as professionals. Yeah, so can link up with me on LinkedIn. My name is my screen name here. And yeah, looking forward to interacting and connecting.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Kondwani and Brighton, are you guys here? Any support you need from the audience?
Brighton, do you want to go first? I can go first.
You can go first. You can go first.
Oh, okay. If he's going to use, okay, great. I can go first, or you can go first. Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Oh yeah, he said you can go first, Kondwani.
Right. Let me just go first.
Sure.
So the support that you can contribute like to Shamba data, basically if you have like any inputs concerning the agriculture industry in terms of the market and data in agriculture in your specific country, okay, you can always feel free to reach out, and we can like onboard you like with one of our like our potential customers, and we can walk you through what the Shamba data product is, and yeah, basically like learning more about Shamba data. That's it.
Yeah, more or less along the same lines as Brighton. Like what Nelson pointed out in his call, we are a startup and there are many other areas that we could have missed out. Like I noticed how Nelson talked about market price prediction, or generally just showing the many gaps or many market opportunities that we would love to solve, but we can only figure out if those gaps exist if we talk to more people on the call, like Nelson, who have a good idea of the agriculture industry or active players in this market, and would generally love to connect, interact, and learn more about not just your industry, but what pain points or problems you face. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And with that, I think we'll bring the call to a close. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening, I believe. Have a good one.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good
Thank you
weekend.
guys for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.